Thanks for watching Missouri Viewpoints, the program dedicated to the civil and informed discussion of the social, economic, and political issues that affect us all. I'm Mike Ferguson, and as always, we're coming to you from the Hard Bean Cafe in downtown Grandview. Well, believe it or not, we're just a couple of months away from the 2008 legislative session, and the political issues that affect us are still hot topics. My guest today is State Representative Brian Baker. He is from the 123rd District, which covers northern Cass County. Brian, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, let's go ahead and get right to the issues. The top issue right now, or at least one we keep hearing about, is health care. Now, Missouri's Medicaid reforms have been in place. We're going on a couple years now, and it's still going to be a big campaign issue. Some people are saying that going back to 2005, anywhere between 91,000 and 700,000 people have been ejected from the state's health care program. What's your reaction when you hear these claims?
I think the number has been that, opposition's from around 100,000 people. My problem with that number is that, number one, a lot of those people are people who just did not renew. They were contacted, they were asked to renew, and they chose not to renew. Some of those people were people who were receiving Missouri Medicaid dollars in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Kansas. And no one wants to talk about that dirty little secret that we had Missouri Medicaid dollars going out of state and not to Missouri citizens. We had people making well over $100,000 a year that were getting Medicaid services. Nobody wants to talk about those issues. They want to just scream out numbers, and I'm a person that looks at facts. And the fact of the matter is, our reforms put in place started looking at the real needs of people and not the expansion of government.
Okay, now the Missouri Health Net is in place. Are there any changes that you still want to see made to the state's healthcare system in the 2008 legislative session?
Yeah, I think we're asking the wrong questions about healthcare. We're asking who's going to pay for it, not how's it going to be more affordable. The fact of the matter is, healthcare is rising, and government's paying more for healthcare than the average independent citizen who has private healthcare. And we're not making healthcare more affordable. We're just expanding government's role in healthcare and paying more money for it. And eventually, what's going to happen is we're going to have to say, all right, we only have so many tax dollars. If we're going to start socialized medicine, which is where we're moving, then we're going to ask who's going to pay for it, how are we going to pay for it? Well, either we start cutting other programs or we're going to increase taxes. And I don't believe socialized medicine is where we should go. I think we need to look at the private market and look at capitalism and find a better way to do the job. Okay, now what should the state's role in healthcare be? I think one of the things that we can look at that are legitimate issues are the disabled, those who are just cannot do it on their own, senior citizens, the truly poor. And I think the real question is, how do you define poor? Right now, a family of 5 who makes $72,000 a year can qualify for state Medicaid insurance. To me, $72,000 is not poor. I look at a single mom who's making $20,000 a year, and I can understand the need to maybe look at her and try to help her out, or a person in a wheelchair, or a senior citizen who's 80 years old and has no other options, no work, no way to make an income. I think those are some serious issues that we look at, but we're not asking the right questions in healthcare. Okay, let's shift gears to public education. Okay. As you're aware, many school districts in the state are suing the state, saying that the funding formula is inadequate and saying that is inequitable. Now, you're on the Appropriations Committee for Education. Yep. What's your reaction to that? My reaction is that in the last 3 years, we have increased education by over $500 million. That's over $500 million. Recently, Cole County Court ruled that our formula was equitable as it can be in the state of Missouri, and also ruled that we're meeting our constitutional obligation to fund education with at least 25% of our state budget. We're like at 32%. So we're meeting our obligation to fund our public schools and hitting the mark. What's interesting and what the public needs to know is that the 200 school districts in the state of Missouri out of 525 that are suing the state are using tax dollars to sue the state for more taxes. And the state's having to use tax dollars to defend itself. It's a backward way of looking at a tax increase, and it's not the judicial branch's responsibility to raise taxes. It's not their duty. Now, another education-related issue, a few weeks ago, we had Dr. Marge Williams from the Hickman Middle School District, and she said that the federal No Child Left Behind Act is adversely affecting Missouri schools. Is that a fair complaint? I would actually agree with that. I have a problem with big government intrusion into states' rights issues. I don't think anybody in Washington, D.C. understands how or what Missouri children are facing in education. I think that we need to personally get rid of No Child Left Behind, let each state set its own standards, let each state decide its own future in education, and that the federal government ought to get out of it.
Okay, now let's go to another issue, highly controversial as well. Recently, Governor Blunt has directed law enforcement to check immigration status when they run into people in things like traffic stops and other similar situations. Do you agree with this approach, and what should the state's role in illegal immigration be?
I think it's a very reasonable approach. If you arrest someone for a crime, I think it's reasonable to ask them, no matter what ethnicity they come from, no matter what they look like, you know, are you a legal citizen of this state, of the United States? I don't think it's a hard question, and we look at some of the national cases that we've seen hit the media of illegal immigrants who have had violent crimes, and if they had been deported, they would not have committed those crimes. So I think it's a reasonable solution, and I don't think you're going to see any more profiling than you do now. I think you can train officers to look at that, and it's not Hispanics that we're looking for. I think we're looking for all sorts of people who might be here legally, especially terrorists. I think it's a reasonable question to ask, and I don't think anyone's going to target anybody. I think we're just looking to be safe and secure.
That one of the objections to this that's coming from various special interest groups, ethnic groups, is saying that this is going to lead to, if it hasn't already started, more profiling. What's your answer to them to alleviate this?
I honestly I don't see that happening. I understand that that's been an issue in the past. I think that America is growing over the last 50 years to accept more ethnic groups. I think that people are just going to ask the basic question. I would expect someone to ask that of me if they felt like I was from the Middle East, or maybe from another part of the world where a Caucasian might come from a terrorist background. I think that we just need to ask the question. I think it's a simple question.
Let's go on to politics now. The biggest story so far in 2007 has been State Senator Chris Koster switching from the Republican Party to the Democrat Party. I know that you know Chris for many years. What is your reaction to his decision, and how's that affected the Republicans in Jeff City?
I don't fault anyone for changing their mind or moving on to a different position. I think the problem I have with the switch is that he made a promise to a group of voters who elected him, and I think that he had a responsibility to fulfill that promise, and then in his next election cycle, after he's completed those promises and stuck to those commitments, then say, I'm going to move on to something different now. I honestly think he should have fulfilled his obligations as a Republican and kept the promises that he made. With that being said, I think that it impacts the state. It's up to the people to decide how it really impacts us.
One last question. It just seems to me that either through the emergence of blogs or just operatives, that we are turning Missouri politics into almost a blood sport anymore. Are we running off good people from getting involved in public service? We've got about 30 seconds left.
Yeah, I think we are. I think that people are getting tired of it. I know that I am, and I think it's time for the people of Missouri to stand up and say, we're tired of this. Let's look at issues. Let's look at real questions. Let's quit playing who's got the biggest point on the scoreboard.
All right, Brian, thank you for being here. I hope you come back on the program in the next legislative session. As always, I want to thank the Hard Bean Cafe for giving us a place to have these discussions. When you come down to Grandview, come to Hard Bean. Try the white chocolate mocha. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.